From a vantage point 35 years later, it can be hard to conceive of a 1988 game being a throwback. Now, 5 years of advancement in video games is nothing. Nobody in 2024 when this video is released is going, "Man, remember when we played Untitled Goose Game? Why don't they make anything like that anymore?" In the case of Gyruss for the Disk System, it's Konami dipping deep into their back catalog for one last game that they could put out on the platform. The arcade game Gyruss originated in 1983, and while it's definitely well regarded among arcade aficionados, it also arrived kind of late. A single-screen arcade shooter at the exact moment when everyone was moving as far away from that as they could. The designer of the arcade game was Yoshiki Okamoto, and in a really bizarre coincidence, he left Konami for Capcom immediately after this, and wound up designing the previous episode's game Samurai Sword. With only 3 days between those releases, that might make him the game designer who had the least amount of time between his games. The plot of the game is that the evil president of the solar system, Domus, has launched a war to expand his territory. But his son Rudolph had been sent into exile, and now he's leading rebel forces against his father, and he charges in a single ship to take out the rest of the solar system. All of that plot was added in the Famicom Disk System version. In the original arcade version, there's no real story. The way that Gyruss works is that you're always flying down a hyperspace tube, and enemies will zoom in and out of it. When all of the enemies are destroyed, then you advance to the next stage. Sometimes there will be something more, like targets at the back of the tube, or a boss that you'll have to destroy before you can move on. But really, this is everything there is to the game. Pressing B will fire your regular shot. There is no auto-fire here, so you better mash that button fast. And pressing A will fire a super shot, which will go through targets and destroy multiple enemies. You only have one of these super shots when you start out, but it's pretty easy to get more as a power-up. The other important thing to know about the controls is that there's two different control schemes, Control A and Control B. With Control A, pressing in a cardinal direction will start rotating your ship toward that point. So if you're in the bottom half of the screen and you press up, you'll travel on a circular path around the tube until you get to the top. The advantage of this control scheme is that it's intuitive. It's easy to understand what's going to happen. But you're losing some fine control here, and when you push in a direction that's 180 degrees from your ship, it's a bit ambiguous which way around the circle you'll go. This four-way control is the setup used on the arcade machine. Control B strips this all back. Just two directions, left and right, or in this case, clockwise and counterclockwise. The downside here is that it can feel a little bit unnatural when you start playing. You'll have to remember that your movement at the top of the screen is reversed. That said, this is my preferred movement style. Because your ship is only operating on a single axis, even if it's circular, having only two directional controls just feels better to me. On stages, besides the enemies that swoop in and out at you, you'll have some that appear from time to time, and these will be two that take shots with a power-up floating between them. If you shoot the power-up, then you'll collect it. The blue one doubles your firepower, giving you two shots at once, and it's always the first power-up that appears. And then once you have the double shot, orange power-ups appear, and these will give you one additional shot with the super gun. The bosses in Gyruss appear when you arrive at a planet, or a large member of the Kuiper Belt in the case of Pluto, and these are a bit of a mixed bag. You have fortresses that aren't too difficult to deal with, you just have to shoot the targets when they open, and then you'll have bosses that can be pretty nasty. They've got a tendency to crowd you out right at the edge of the screen, and you've got to expose yourself to some pretty significant risk in order to hit them. Your only real option here is to learn the pattern and use some real hit-and-run tactics, preferably firing the super shot at the exact right moment. If you manage to take down a boss, you'll go to a bonus stage where waves of enemies will come in, and your goal is to shoot all of them before they move off the screen. Shoot the miscolored ones and an item will appear, orange capsules for bonus points, and blue capsules will destroy everything on the screen when you shoot them. You get points based on how many ships you shot down, and a bonus for shooting all of them. Or, You could only shoot down the same number of ships as the stage number, in which case you get a very large bonus. That's easy to do at the first bonus stage, not so easy to do as you get further on. There are 39 stages total in the Famicom Disk System version of Gyruss, and this is not an easy game to beat. There are no continues here when you run out of lives. Though there is a code for 30 lives that you can use. Just hit A, B, right, left, down, down, up, up, in the roughly 5 seconds that the title screen appears, and you'll start out with a huge stock of lives, though probably not enough to get you through the game unless you're pretty good. And yes, that code was the Konami code in reverse. Of course, one of the most memorable things in Gyruss is the music. This is the game that plays Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, and honestly it's a pretty good rendition of it. Gyruss for the FDS doesn't seem to have been wildly popular. An arcade game from 1983 felt really backward at this point. In comparison, exactly 1 month after this, Konami is going to release Gradius 2, and you can kind of see why Gyruss just couldn't get any attention with that. But that said, it does have fans in Japan. The people who have gone back to it all found it to be a pretty good port, which I think at this point is self-evident. Gyruss is a very simple game, but it's one of those games that does its simple thing extremely well. As Konami's final disk system game, it's a good way to go out. A nod back to their past, and a fun one to play.